Welcome, everyone. This is Cindy Metcalf with Relentless Hope, and we're in the Relentless Hope studio. I'm in Studio One. Goel here. My co-host is in Studio Two. And today we have a special guest. Her name's Janna. She's a former school teacher and she's a whistleblower. I consider her a hero for what she did and everything that she had gone through to protect the children at her former employer, which was Sierra Bonita Elementary in Spanish Fork. We're here to get the details of what happened in this particular case. This is an ongoing case. She's going to have an upcoming hearing, and we want you to hear the story so you can support her. Um, anyway, like I said, we're here to do this interview, ask questions, find out who Mr. Vilar, the perpetrator, is, a little bit of his background. But also, we just want to encourage and support Janna as well. So, without further ado, let's get started. Welcome, Janna. Thank you for coming to our show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're anxious to hear about your story. Why don't you start at the beginning?
How far back would you like me to go?
Just be just before the principal got there. Tell us about your former principal and the good relationship that you had had with him.
So I worked at Sierra Bonita. I helped open the school in 2011, and we had a pretty incredible staff as far as I was concerned. We had a principal who was phenomenal. Um, he created this environment that was so loving and welcoming, and I think he noticed the good that was happening, and I think everybody worked really hard because of him. It became a family in my opinion. I mean, I felt it. I felt like I had really good relationships with my colleagues. In fact, relationships to where we would hang out on the weekends, we'd go to movies together, we would go support our colleagues when they were in plays or whatever they were doing. That was the type of culture that was created at this school. Um, it really was more of just a community because you had the parents, you had the students, you had the staff, you had the faculty. And I think for the most part, there was just a lot of love and a lot of friendship in that area, but in that building. I felt it anyway. So I think the principal did a phenomenal job at creating a school culture that was warm and welcoming and inclusive and all of those things. And he's also someone who just always did the right thing for the right reasons. So I had a lot of respect for him.
So that camaraderie, that friendliness, inclusivity lasted from approximately 2011 to about 2017. So what ha
2017, so the 16,
Okay.
17 school year.
Mhm.
So at that point, he was appointed to be the new special ed director. And he left the school to go to the district office, and we had a new incoming principal from a nearby school. And in fact, the principal actually lived in that catchment area. So I think he had a lot of support with that as well, just because he was so familiar with that area.
Mhm. So he was from Larson Elementary?
He was.
Okay, all right. So tell us, how did this all begin?
Um, Honestly, like we knew there was changes coming, so we went to board meeting where these changes were being made, and that's when our current principal was made the SPED director, and that's when the new principal was appointed to Sierra Bonita. He was actually a friend of mine. He taught my son in sixth grade. I had a really good relationship with him, and so at that meeting, I texted him and I said, "Hey, our staff wants to get to know you. Let's meet up. Let's have ice cream." And so we just kind of all went to Cold Stone, got to know him, had fun, had ice cream, and that's where it was. So we were excited. I was excited.
So
Um,
you were off to a good start.
I thought so, yeah.
Okay.
I definitely thought so. Um, I think what happened is there were rumors starting, and I think there's a misunderstanding that I was behind these rumors, but I had nothing to do with these rumors because I didn't know the custodian at all. And I was even unaware that the custodian was coming with the principal. That wasn't something that was on my radar at all. Um, what I think happened was secretaries from Larson were talking to secretaries at Sierra Bonita. Lunch workers at Larson were talking to lunch workers at Sierra Bonita. And I think this is where the communication started. Um, and then I had colleagues coming to me and saying, "Oh, did you hear um, our our current custodian at the time had another job offer, but he was considering staying at the school because they had heard the rumors about the incoming custodian." Um, Again, like I wasn't really privy to any of this, but I did have a good friend who was working over at Larson Elementary, and my colleagues are like, "Hey, reach out to her and see what she knows. Reach out to her and see what she knows." And so I just texted really innocently, like, "Hey, what do you know about the custodian? What's going on?" And I don't remember her giving me very much. Um, and I remember it kind of ending at that point. I don't remember any sort of ongoing conversation. In fact, I kept those texts. I have those messages saved. I screenshot them. Um, but I have like that documentation that I really wasn't behind any of the rumors or any of whatever was being said about the custodian.
Is it odd that a principal would invite employees to go with him to a new school?
Um, I would say it was out of the ordinary that that would happen. It's not odd that they bring employees, but usually when they bring employees, it's usually a teacher
Hmm.
or it's maybe a facilitator or, someone like that usually comes. I don't know that I was aware of anyone in the district who would take their custodian with them to the next school.
Yeah, I'm to me that is so unusual because you're bringing your janitor along. I mean, he must be the greatest cleaner in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, continue.
Anyway, I mean, I think looking back, it was unusual, but I don't know that I put a lot of thought in it at the time. I mean, hindsight carries its own weight, doesn't it? Like,
Mm.
look back, you can look at different things and you can say that was a little odd, but at the time, I don't know that I thought much about it. I was a PR specialist for the school and all the articles that I'd written and all of the people I had invited to do assemblies, they have completely scrubbed me from the internet. You can no longer find anything from me, even though I was, very much contributing to the Nebo School District.
The question I have is that, from about 2010 to 2017 or so, you're an employee of Sierra Bonita Elementary. And from what I'm seeing in your files, the summary that I'm reading is that about 2016, new principal Garrett Anderson comes in from Larson Elementary, and he brings over this custodian, Adrian VR. Now, obviously, there were rumors based on what you said so far of his inappropriate conduct at Larson Elementary. And one of the things in our initial interview that we did, or that stuck out to me, was that he drove a Range Rover. Is that correct?
Yes, a black Range Rover.
So he's a school custodian, and you said that he was working for Garrett Anderson.
Hmm.
His window,
Allegedly.
allegedly.
Hmm.
On the side as well
Yeah,
as
just
in the school.
yeah, side he had a side business and allegedly the custodian worked for his side business.
So I want to take a look really quickly, and I want you to tell me what you think about this. Um, in 2013, Adrian VR, had um, a salary at Nebo School District. And so, as I understand it, that's the year that he was working at Larson Elementary. And so his total pay plus benefits was $45,666.28. And he was working at Larson Elementary. So that's around what you'd expect a custodian to make. But let's fast forward to 2014. His pay jumps by 13 grand to $58,955.30. He's still working at Larson Elementary. He basically gets a $13,000 pay raise year over year, which I would find unusual in the extreme. By 2015, he gets another pay raise to $68,593.17. That's a hell of a jump
Yeah.
over 2 years.
Did you
He
compare it to
gets
my pay raise? I'm
to
just curious.
you. I know I haven't compared it to you. Custodians tend to make a lot in Nebo School District. That one of the I was really shocked at how much they were paid. Certainly not the custodians that I grew up with or that Cindy grew up with at school. They're making in the 60 to $70,000 a year range. Was there some sort of a negotiation of salary like district wide, like unions and whatnot, over that time period that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, over 2 years, that's like a 30% pay raise.
Yeah. So his
That,
pay drops to 64,000, a little under 65,000 in 2016. And he is listed as working at both Larson Elementary and Sierra Bonita. So he would have started at Sierra Bonita in 2016, per what you've told us. And then what's truly odd is that he is listed the next 2 years as a custodian at both Santaquin Elementary or Sierra Bonita, both at the same time, in both 2017 and 2018. In your experience and observation, and as a former employee of Nebo School District, is it common for a custodian to split time between elementary schools?
Well, I'm wondering if because the school year is broken up differently than the year, and I don't see what you're looking at, would it be so 2016 would be Larson and Sierra Bonita. 2017 would be Sierra Bonita and Santaquin. And then 2018 should only be Santaquin. Is that what
No,
you're seeing?
no, I mean, 2018, he's listed as both Santaquin and Sierra Bonita.
That's really interesting to me.
It was something that was extremely interesting to me because in 2019, he's only listed at Santaquin and his pay drops to $25,220.58. Now, obviously, he had a pending criminal matter that he was dealing with, and he was potentially dismissed mid-year.
Well, it's interesting. He was arrested May of 2018, and he was still being paid by the district in 2019. So that is one that seemed a little odd to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know that he owned a cleaning business. Did you ever hear about that?
No.
He had a Queens of Cleaning LLC that was registered to his home in Santaquin. The company did dissolve in 2026, obviously, with his current criminal cases. Um, have you ever heard of a man named George Scott Critchfield?
No.
Because he briefly incorporated a company called Renter's Realm LLC with that gentleman who appears to be based in Payson and Provo. Um, and so that sets the ground for what a plausible explanation as to why he might have had a Range Rover. But the issue with that is his divorce decree. And in that divorce decree, um, the vehicles that are divvied up are a Ford Explorer, a Jaguar, a trailer, and an ATV. He was awarded the cleaning business, but collectively, he and his wife had a stunning amount of credit card debt. He had uh, $81,118 in credit card debt.
No.
32,950 of it was associated with the cleaning business, and he had credit card debt outside of the cleaning business of $48,168. Now, as of his divorce in 2013, he walked away between his cleaning business and his personal credit card debt with that $81,118 in credit card debt, which begs the question, where did he get the money to buy a Range Rover, even with a $70,000 custodian salary? And why did his salary over a 2 year period increase almost $20,000?
Those are good questions.
Those are, I think, excellent questions that pertain to his relationship with the principal in your case. The principal who came over with him uh,
Larson.
from Larson Elementary, that would be Garrett Anderson. One of the things that I do is I always follow the money when it comes to these types of cases. And I think it's very telling that there's a $20,000 increase as he switches schools. He's also being paid by two schools at once in 2018. It could be something, it could be nothing. But the reality of it is, by 2016, your principal decides to take another job. So the fall of 2016, Garrett Anderson comes over from Larson Elementary, and he brings with him this custodian. And the summer school teachers were already talking about Adrian Villar being creepy and mean to kids, like students. So he had a reputation that kind of preceded him, and he had been charged uh, on multiple occasions. His first arrest was in May 2018, according to you. He has had at least three criminal cases that I'm aware of, having reviewed court records on exchange. So you're coming into the school year. It's the fall. You're getting ready to start a new school year. You got a new principal. You went to Cold Stone Creamery. Kind of had a get to know you. And even at that time, before the school year even commenced, there were rumors about his conduct at Larson Elementary. Okay. And so who was the first person that you heard anything from regarding Adrian VR?
Um, there were a few people. There there was talk in the lunchroom. There was talk to our then custodian, and there were teachers that had discussed this. And the interesting thing is, my classroom was kind of the center of the building. And so it did become a hub of people coming to chit chat or talk or whatever. So I think people ended up in my room talking for whatever reason. I guess maybe because I was the center of the building. So I heard it from staff members and faculty. That's where I heard it. It's not something I perpetuated. It's not even something I spread. Like I had my own life. I had other things going on. It was kind of at the bottom of my interest, you know?
So the
So,
problem started in February 2017, correct?
Well, again, like I think things were being said before then. I was painted as a person who had it out for him, who didn't like him, but there I was busy. Like he wasn't someone who was on my radar. I didn't have any gripes with him at all. I remember one time getting frustrated because um, it was like the fountain broke and there was water going everywhere, and I was trying to get a hold of him, and it had nothing to do with him necessarily, other than I had a classroom and I had water, spraying into my classroom. And I think that was perceived as me not liking him. It had nothing to do with him. It was my own frustration with the situation. But other than that, like I just didn't have that much interaction with him. In fact, I remember after that incident, um, I think people thought like I was annoyed with him, which I wasn't, but I reached out to the principal. I said, "Hey, what's his favorite drink? I'm going to bring him a drink." Like that was an unfortunate event, and I went and got him a Dr. Pepper and brought him a Dr. Pepper. Like I just didn't have an axe to grind with this man at all.
help me to understand that statement because it's on the one hand, you're hearing rumors about him being inappropriate with children in his prior employment. By your own statement, your classroom, located in the center of the building, is kind of a hub, and other teachers and faculty members and staff members are coming to your classroom to discuss this, to discuss allegations against this gentleman from his prior employment or his prior school. I would think it would be natural to have kind of an axe to grind or to be a little more wary and vigilant towards him based on what you were hearing from his prior employer.
So thinking back, I was I was approached and reprimanded from the principal because of these rumors that I didn't start and didn't necessarily spread. Um, and he kept telling me what a great guy he was, that he was giving him a fresh start, a second chance, um, trying to just like say, no, he's misunderstood or whatever. I had no reason other than people's talk to have any opinion of him. Um, I hadn't heard anything about him being inappropriate with children. That's not something I ever heard, other than he yelled at children. There's a difference between yelling at children and being inappropriate with children. So I had heard nothing about his inappropriateness with children. Um, I did hear that people were uncomfortable around him, but there was never any factual evidence of him doing anything to anyone that I was aware of. So I think you're right, but I was just really busy. It wasn't on my radar.
Okay. So around what time did Garrett Anderson, your principal, ask to speak with you out in the hallway about these rumors? Like, can you give me a rough time?
It was before the new school year, so it was the end of the school year in 2016. So I'm guessing it's probably April, maybe March, April-ish. Um,
April 2016?
yeah, around it was, I just know it was the end of the school year. So it was in the spring of 2016. And I I'm not quite sure why he came to me. Either it's because he knew me and we had a relationship, a friendship, or it's because my friend worked at his then school, Larson Elementary, and he put that together in some way. Like, I'm not quite sure why it was me that he came to talk to when I really wasn't the ringleader on any of this. But yes, he did come. He pulled me out. I was um, doing testing with some of my students, and he pulled me out of the classroom. And I really thought it was just going to be a friendly conversation, and it was not a friendly conversation at all. And it felt like he was interrogating me, and he wanted to know who I'd talked to, who was talking, and then he wanted the names of everybody so he could go talk to everybody who was talking about this.
Wow.
Um,
So this was before he and Villar came for the summer to set up the school year.
yes.
Wow. Okay.
So
That's interesting.
he had started at the school before VR came over.
He wasn't working there. He just took time out of his day from Larson Elementary to come over and have that conversation with me. In fact, the conversation was so upsetting that my then principal kind of called him out on it and said, "You owe her an apology." I don't know what the conversation was. All I know that there was a follow-up conversation with my then principal and the new principal to kind of smooth things over. If I remember right,
Well,
it was an apology, like, "Hey, I shouldn't have come at you like that," or whatever it was.
what's extraordinary to me about this is that he took time out of his day at Larson Elementary, where he was the principal, to come over to your elementary school, Sierra Bonita, and confront you, who you weren't working for him,
No,
and he was not your direct supervisor. So the question is, he came to from Spanish Fork to Santa Quinn. Is that correct?
no, the schools were located within miles of each other. They weren't very far from each
Yeah. So yes, Sierra Bonita is in Spanish Fork,
other.
but it's a he drove 4 minutes at
Yeah,
least
That
yeah,
is unusual.
to come to your school, which he had not started at, to ask you about rumors that he alleged that you were perpetuating about Adrian Billard, who was still employed over at Larson at that point, correct?
yes.
And so the point that I want to make to our viewers is Adrian VR had such a reputation that people were discussing that reputation before he had even formally started employment, months before he would start employment at Sierra Bonita. And his supervisor, his boss, who was bringing him over from Larson Elementary, decided to take time out of his day as the principal of Larson Elementary to drive 4 miles or to drive 4 minutes, 5 minutes, it's about 1.1 miles across Grand Army of the Republic Highway
Yeah, it was just
He
over the bridge and up the road. It was not very far.
over the bridge and up the road. He crossed Highway 6, I see, and comes over to Sierra Bonita to pull you out of class while you're testing kids at the end of the year to confront you about this.
Yes.
That's an extraordinary thing to do. I mean, as someone who is a former educator, was a former teacher and coach, I don't think I've ever heard of the principal of another school taking time out at the end of the year during end of the year testing to come confront another educator at a different school, even though he might be switching over to that school in the next school year. That speaks to two things to me. One is the closeness of his relationship with Adrian BR, and two, how determined he was to quash any discussion of those allegations about Adrian BR's behavior. And they're no longer allegations at this point, in my opinion. He's had three criminal cases, two are currently pending that I see in exchange. And all of them have substantially the same allegations. He gets a child in an isolated position away from everyone else. He exposes his genitals to that child. He then induces that child to have sexual contact with him, either touching his genitalia or orally sodomizing that child. In one of the cases, he is alleged to have anally raped a child. And then, of course, the MO that he uses in the aftermath of it is to threaten to murder the child and the child's family if he tells. Those are the allegations against this gentleman. And from what I'm hearing, there were rumors and whisperings of impropriety as early as 2016, before Adrian VR even started. And those rumors extended to the lunchroom, that is your support staff, other teachers. This is a gentleman who doesn't even work at your school, but you know that he's coming over, and his reputation is apparently so bad at Larson Elementary that there are whispers of this behavior preceding him before he even formally starts at Sierra Bonita. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yes, that's an accurate assessment. And I have recently um, learned of a phrase they call passing the trash. And I did not make that phrase up, but it's very, very, unfortunately, it's common in school districts. When something like this happens, they move them to another school rather than remove them, and it's called passing the
Yes.
trash.
What's extraordinary about it is Garrett Anderson is making $150,000 a year as a principal. He is willing to put his own employment and his own reputation on the line and potentially alienate future employees, future educators who are working under him by coming to your school, which he hasn't even formally started at, in 2016 during end of the year testing to confront you about this, to accuse you of spreading rumors about Adrian VR, but Adrian VR is guilty. Adrian VR has numerous children who have accused him of abusing them. And let's talk about your performance up to that point. So, up to that point, you had no issues with performance or evaluations or anything. There was nothing
Nothing,
in your,
absolutely nothing. Um, in fact, I I created a lot of opportunities at the school to showcase the school. I had had the school superintendent, Superintendent Menlove, at an assembly at our school. At the time, it was Lieutenant Governor Cox. I had him there. I had Senator Henderson. At the time, she was the senator. I had trying to think, but I created these opportunities to have people from the state come to the school and to showcase it. And I was very much a part of those opportunities. I had a education meeting with Governor Herbert and Lieutenant Governor Cox. And so the school board invited me to come and speak at one of their closed session meetings. These things were in the paper, they were on the website. And so not only was I not a troublemaker, but I feel like I did a lot of good for not,
It's really interesting that you would use that term to typify what you were alleged to have done. You're a troublemaker by telling the truth and raising
yeah.
a warning about an individual who is a sexual predator. And if you or someone you know, Larson Elementary teachers or Sierra Bonita or Santa Aquin Elementary teachers, if you or someone you know would like to send information about Adrian VR, you can do so at goel@investigationsandritualabuse.com. I will be happy to take your reports and any tips that you can offer. Here at Relentless Hope, we do support survivors, and one of the ways that we do that, beyond offering counseling services um, that we pay for out of donor funds, is by telling the truth about these allegations. And if my wife doesn't feel comfortable with me doing it under the auspices of Relentless Hope, I'll do it at Investigations and Ritual Abuse. I'm just saying. So,
So Joelle, as you're looking at how many you've got exchange pulled up, how many charges, how many people are involved in the charges that you're seeing?
conduct that occurred in 2017. And it point blank says aggravated sexual abuse of a child, first degree felony. The defendant, Adrian VR, did take indecent liberties with a child and lewdness involving a child, which is a Class A misdemeanor. And so, Cody Tipler of the department, Santaquin, uh, this is his probable cause statement. Between August 2017 and May 2018 in Utah County, the victim was 7 or 8 years old and attended the school where the defendant worked. The victim disclosed that one day she left the lunchroom to go to the bathroom, which we're going to get to. It seems to be a favored location for Mr. VR to accost his potential victims and his actual victims. She left the lunchroom to go to the bathroom when the defendant called her over and told her to follow him. The victim complied and said the defendant took her into a supply closet, then shut and locked the door. The defendant pulled down his pants and underwear and told the victim to touch his penis. He threatened that if she made any noise, she would get hurt. The victim was frightened and complied, touching the defendant's penis until he told her to stop. After he told her to stop, he again warned her not to tell anyone and then returned her to the lunchroom. The defendant occupied a position of special trust in relation to the victim. He was a school employee. So this is a 7 or 8 year old girl. Now, as a result, they swore out a criminal information and they arrested Mr. VR. And the full probable cause statement, I want to pull that up. The full affidavit of probable cause goes into greater detail. So
It,
in this case,
understanding is she recanted her statement, is that correct?
I'm not seeing that she recanted.
Mm.
I'm seeing that she was a third grade student. Um, she was 7 or 8 years of age, and she identified a photograph of Adrian VR um, as her abuser. So The sheriff's deputy did initiate a request for photo lineup, adhering to Santaquin Police Department policy, which stipulates that the individual conducting the lineup should be impartial and possess no prior knowledge of the case of the suspect's identity. I followed protocol. Officer Golding, unconnected to the case and lacking knowledge of the suspect, was selected to conduct the photo lineup with the victim. Following the procedure, the victim positively identified Adrian VR as the individual who victimized her during her third grade year. That's one case. There are
And
two others.
that was before Sierra Bonita.
That was before.
Are you sure?
Uh,
I thought
that
that
was
was
after Sierra Bonita, actually.
okay. It was after because I think it was two at Sierra Bonita, one at Santa Quin, and then another one at Sierra Bonita, and then there was a neighbor that came
Yeah.
out.
There
Like,
was a neighbor that he sodomized in his home, his private residence. And so as I pull up the rest of, there was a victim who is now an adult who came forward on August 21st, 2025. And he shared that he had lived next door to Adrian VR when he was a child in Santaquin. He mentioned that he was between the ages of 4 and 6. He remembers being sexually assaulted 3 to 5 times by Adrian. According to the victim, Adrian had a son who was around the same age as the victim. The victim states that when he went over to play with Adrian's son at Adrian's house, he was sexually assaulted by Adrian. During these incidents, the victim states that he remembers Adrian exposing himself to him, making him touch Adrian's penis with his hands, and performing oral sex on Adrian. In addition, the victim describes how Adrian would take both their pants off and Adrian would stick his penis to the victim's rectum, causing pressure and pain for the victim. The victim reported that the assaults have caused him severe trauma, impacting his life in a negative way. During the interview, he described living in fear and the trauma that has affected every aspect of his life. He also mentioned the countless hours he has spent in therapy as a result of his experience. The victim reported that after the sexual assault, Adrian threatened to kill the victim if he spoke out about it, and that the threats were real, and Adrian was stern to the point that the victim was convinced that his life was in danger if he ever spoke of the assaults. The threats made the victim feel scared and anxious about ever seeing Adrian again. It is important to note that Adrian has a history of prior arrest for related sexual abuse charges stemming from incidents at Sierra Bonita involving other children. All of the victims described the assaults in the same way, typically occurring in an isolated or private location. Adrian is currently in custody on other related charges involving child victims, and that case is set for trial. That's right, in August, I believe 18th of 2026, it is scheduled for an 8-day trial. Two cases have been consolidated. They will both be tried by a jury at that time. And of course, from the story you're telling us, Garrett Anderson, principal of Sierra Bonita, newly incoming principal of Sierra Bonita, at that time, he was still the principal of Larson Elementary. He came over to your school at Sierra Bonita while you were in the middle of testing students. He pulled you out of the classroom, even though he had no authority to do so because he was not your supervisor, in order to interrogate you about these rumors that were actually factual about Adrian VR.
yes, that's exactly what happened.
Do you know if
So,
Garrett Anderson retaliated against any other educators?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Janna, can you please tell us about what happened in February of 2017?
So I was working with a group of students. We were sitting at a table, and I had like this, I don't know what you want to call it, like this prompting to go check on one of my students. So I'm going to back up just a little bit. One of my kiddos wanted to go to the bathroom. So he ran to the bathroom, and this kiddo was typically really fast in the restroom. And he would come back and I'd be like, "Hey, did you wash your hands?" Like, because he was always so quick. So he had gone to the restroom. I was sitting with a group of students, and I just felt like, oh my gosh, I've got to check. Like, he's been gone longer than usual. I need to go check on him. So I just the restroom was right outside my classroom door. So I walked out the classroom. I leaned just in and said, "Hey, is everything okay? Are you doing okay in there?" And it was silent. I didn't hear anything. I said, "Hey, are you okay?" And the student didn't reply, but that's when the custodian said, "Oh, I'm in here. I'm just helping him." And it caught me off guard. But the first thing I thought, I think he told me, again, this is 9 years ago, and I've written things down, but I don't know that I remember the exact verbiage of everything that happened. But I remember him saying maybe something like he had an accident, he had something on his clothes. And so my first reaction was to go call the office, ask for some help in the restroom. And that's what I did. I went back into the classroom. I called the front office. They sent two people to help me. I think it was like the nurse and the secretary. Um, and then I heard a radio saying, reaching out to the custodian saying, "Hey, we need cleanup in the restroom." And he's like, "Oh, I'm already in here." So I heard it, and I'm assuming the nurse and the secretary heard that same radio call, which you'll understand later why that was important. And it just became kind of chaos for a few minutes of me going back to my classroom, making sure my class was okay, making sure like things were happening with my student. I do have to say, I get some criticism on this. Like, why didn't you walk in there? Why didn't you go into the restroom and check on him? And it's like, you don't know what you're going to do. Had I known that's what was happening, I would have walked in there, but there was no reason for me to think that anything inappropriate was happening in there. Although it felt odd, like it just felt like that just seems really off, but I had no proof or evidence of anything inappropriate happening. All it was just like this feeling.
Just to clarify, what grade level did you teach at that time?
Um, like it was K through 6. I had special education. I'm a special education teacher.
And how old would you say the student was?
Like third grade.
Third grade, and they had developmental disabilities or physical disabilities,
He was he was a typical kid with a few disabilities. You know what I'm saying? Like he was a pretty typical kid.
but he never had any issues with incontinence or anything like that before. Okay. And so obviously the one thing I want to clarify to you is this is not your fault.
Thank you for saying that. Like I get a
Uh,
lot of criticism about not doing enough or doing too much. So
well, when the guy who's backing him up is your boss and he comes to you before he even is your boss, pulls you out of the classroom without any authority to do so the year before, it's understandable. I think that's a context that needs to be driven home to people. This is your boss. He controls whether or not you have a teaching contract the next year, or he at least has significant input into that. And he has made it very clear that he's behind Adrian VR for whatever reason. And so you had you were not alone in noticing that Adrian VR had unusual behavior. What's telling about it is that criminal information that I just read about the girl who picked Adrian VR out of a photo lineup. She was pulled away from the bathroom into a janitor's closet. So that appears to be a routine act for Mr. VR.
I think there's a pattern for sure.
Yeah. So he's in the bathroom with your student. I believe that's February 14th, 2017.
Yes.
Okay. So on Valentine's Day, 2017,
Yes.
um, he's in the bathroom with your male student, and you reported that um, to Garrett Anderson, your principal.
Yes. But let me back up. Like it felt off, but the story became that I sent the custodian in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the radio. Like I had radioed him in there. I think the story is, again, a lot of things are hearsay on my end because it's rumors and it's talk amongst colleagues, administration, school district, HR, whoever. And so sometimes I'm hearing things secondhand or third hand. Um, but again, like the story was, I was always out to get him. I didn't like the principal, and that among other things that were said about me, and that I radioed him in there, which is impossible because A, I didn't have a radio, and B, I heard that radio to him. So the following day, like again, like I'm kind of processing this. Like I wish, again, hindsight, I wish I would have had a little more foresight to know that this was happening in the school or it could have happened in our school. But I was I naive? Like I don't know. Like I had never experienced anything like this. I'd never had to report anything like this. Um, so the next day I was walking in from another school. I was a mentor to other special ed teachers at different schools, and I was walking in and I saw the custodian again with another student in his office in this private conversation. And again, like it just, I think that was for me, like that felt off, and that was the time that I thought something is not right. And so I went and like reported that, I went to the people I needed to and reported that. Um,
So
one,
for our audience, there's two separate students a day apart, correct?
yeah, it was literally one day apart.
Two separate students that this um, school custodian is with in a
Is
bathroom and in his office.
alone.
Yes,
And one of the things in your summary that I'm looking at, or the summary that Cindy typed up, is that your school had security cameras, correct?
yes.
And the footage was somehow not available for either one of those incidents.
I had heard, I had heard it had been erased, but I do know they have the bathroom incident footage. I know that they have that.
But they didn't have the office footage.
Again, like I went and reported. I don't know what anybody did with that
So
per se.
you reported to Garrett Anderson, and Garrett Anderson then told you what? That he was going to do what with your complaint?
Um, he said thanks. He was out of town actually, and he said thanks for letting me know, we can look into this more. I don't know that I became any part of the second student. There were other people involved with that, and there were other witnesses to that I think they were the ones that were part of that investigation. I was mainly a part of the bathroom investigation.
So he told you several days later that the issue had been resolved and that Adrian BR needed policy training.
Yes, that's what I was told.
He also told you that you were negligent, correct?
Yes.
And why was that? What was his stated reason for saying that you were negligent?
I'm trying to remember if it was because I left my class alone to go check on the student, or if it's because I left the student alone with the custodian. But either way, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't remember which one it was, but I knew that he said that I was potentially negligent in that situation.
So
Gosh.
you're sitting here, you're dealing with a principal who's saying, well, Adrian VR might need policy training, but you're negligent because you left your classroom to go check on a student who was taking too long in the bathroom to make sure that he was okay. And then you left the student alone with Adrian VR in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Um, all of which is intended to shift the blame from Adrian VR to you.
Mhm.
In both
Darvo,
instances, yes. Darvo,
just learned about, and I wish I would have known about Darvo 9 years ago because it explains everything.
What is
Darvo for the
Darbo's? Yeah, go ahead.
Darvo for those of our viewers who are unfamiliar with it was coined by the daughter of the founders of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, Peter and I believe Susan Freyd. Their daughter accused Peter Freyd of molesting her as an adult. She said that she had started to remember some abuse from Peter Freyd. And so Peter and Pamela Freyd actually uh, founded the False Memory Syndrome, staffed it with pedophile sympathizers, and their daughter later came up with the acronym DARVO. And so I want to make sure that I get this correct, unless you recall it off the top of your head what it stands for, and you'd like to explain to our audience.
It's deny, what is
Attack.
attack, reverse, victim, and offender. So it's exactly what they did to me is I became the offender and the custodian became the victim.
And if they would do that to a teacher, an educational professional, or a professional educator, imagine what they would do to a child who tried to come forward.
I, I know why victims don't speak up.
Yeah, because even though you weren't sexually abused, you were reporting impropriety that you saw, and they employed that tactic with you
Yes,
as a grown adult with some years under your belt teaching in that school district. In fact, you had a longer tenure at that time at Sierra Bonita than Garrett Anderson did.
yes.
Uh, and you were not the only one who believed that there was impropriety going on. The school secretary felt that Adrian VR was a pedophile. Ultimately,
You can say school secretary. That's fine with me.
the
Yeah,
school
just use
secretary,
titles.
okay, so the school secretary who left Sierra Bonita felt that Adrian VR was a pedophile, but she had no proof. And she had reported Mr. VR and Garrett Anderson to the district office regarding strange behavior that she felt was inappropriate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so then on February 14th through 15th, 2017, Mr. VR is alone with two male students, one in the bathroom. He says that this student, who has no prior history of incontinence or needing help with using the bathroom, has had an accident. And did you see anything that would substantiate that that student had a bathroom accident?
He didn't. No, I
Okay.
didn't see anything. And later it was confirmed that he had not.
Okay. So ultimately, you had met with Garrett Anderson. Garrett Anderson, then reverse victim and offender, as they said, like Darvo, deny attack, reverse victim and offender. He said that you had called Mr. VR in the bathroom, even though that is impossible because you don't have a radio.
No, no. And even if I couldn't have called him because the custodian's typically not in their office, they're in the lunchroom or they're, or they shouldn't be in the office, they should be out working. It wasn't a protocol that we would just call the custodian from our phone to have him go in there. So
And
it's
of course, there's no phone record of that anyway.
no,
Yeah. And of course, for the second incident, the security footage disappears.
possibly, yeah.
Yeah. So they tell you that the camera footage is unavailable. Anderson tells you he's going to take it higher up in the district and that it's resolved. Mr. VR needs policy training, but he also attacks you as being negligent for leaving your class to check on a student who was taking a long time in the bathroom, and who ultimately, the reason he was taking a long time in the bathroom is because Adrian VR was in the bathroom with him.
Yes.
Got it. So ultimately, you're not comfortable with the resolution. So what do you do next?
I actually texted my special ed director, who was my previous principal, and I said, I'm not comfortable with this. I feel like I don't know what the conversation was, but I just gave him like a hypothetical. And then he gave me a hypothetical back and said, I'm your direct supervisor because I'm a special education teacher. You can always appeal it. And it made it feel like he was encouraging me to appeal it. So I sent an email to the special ed director and the coordinator or his assistant, and set up a meeting to go discuss this with them. Um, I believe they were looking at my emails at that point.
And why do you believe that?
Um, because there would be no way for them to know about that meeting. And that was the morning he actually, the principal actually reported it to HR. It hadn't been reported up until that point.
Until his hand was forced.
Yes, and so I think they were, whoever they are, I'm not quite sure what if it was him, which it most likely was, in my email and saw that I had a meeting, and I think that's when it actually got reported. And I don't know this for a fact, but the information I received was that that was when it was reported.
And so after your meeting, they told you to report it to DCFS. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. They said, I kept saying, I don't know that anything happened. And I think that's just where I just felt really lost in this. Like I didn't know what to do. Everybody was making, everyone, the principal was making it sound like it was such an innocent situation and there was training that needed to be done. And I didn't feel comfortable with it. So once I brought that to the attention of my special ed director, he's like, oh, you have to report this to DCFS. And I wish I would have had that direction from the very beginning, again, because I'm being criticized on it. Like, oh, you report right away. And I just feel like I didn't have anyone giving me solid direction. So my sped director was like, you have to report it. And I got like a little emotional. I'm like, I will report it, but I need you to know that he's going to retaliate against me now for making this report. And I wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. Like you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And so I made that report. And then um, as I had left the district office and I was pulling up to my house, I got a phone call. And it was just like a follow-up, basically saying, we can't have the special ed director and his assistant basically said, we can't have any part of this anymore. You have to work through HR. And then I heard his assistant say, well, they just got that report that morning. That's when they received this report.
How convenient. Um, so really quickly for our audience, I want you to understand this is not isolated. Every teacher in the state of Utah is a mandatory reporter, but a significant number of them have no direction on who they're to report to. Is it the police? Is it CPS? Is it DCFS?
In
The
order,
policy.
sorry, in
What?
order to fulfill the mandatory reporting is it's either police or it's DCFS, one or the other.
Okay.
And
Well,
DCFS
let's
were like, we don't have enough to open an investigation. They, you know what I'm saying? So that's not on me. They chose not to pursue that.
yeah. So the point that I want to make is again, it's not your fault. And also, in the course of the past 4 years, I've come across numerous educators who are unclear on who they're to report this to, which implies that there's a serious problem at the school district level in terms of clarity when it comes to mandatory reporting obligations and who do you report to. And then, of course, as you said, even if you do report and you fulfill your obligations under the law, you report to DCFS or the police, If they choose not to open an investigation, that's it.
Yep.
That's all that's going to happen. And then, of course, it got booted to your human resources department at Nebo. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I think I came back from that meeting with my special ed director feeling frustrated and defeated, like nothing's being done. Like nobody is looking into this, nobody's taking it serious. And I remember standing in a classroom with some close teacher friends, some colleagues, and I was feeling frustrated. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Nobody's going to do anything. Like it's getting swept under the rug. And they're like, well, you belong to the union. You can contact your union rep. And so like again, I'd never been involved in anything like this, and this was all just so new to me. And so someone got me like the name of the representative, and I went to see the representative, and he got me in contact with the union rep, and I went to see the union rep. And I think once they found out that I had contacted my rep, that's when it like turned on me. That's when it got really ugly.
What do you mean it got ugly?
Um, That's when my principal went and solicited statements against me.
And he got one of your
He,
coworkers
he got a couple to say things against me.
to truthfully say that Adrian VR was a pedophile, which we now know that he is,
Yeah.
um, based on the amount of evidence you can reasonably say, even though he hasn't been convicted of a crime, based on the amount of allegations against him by multiple children, he is a pedophile. And if you did say that, all you were doing was reciting facts. Um, and even if you did say it, if Garrett Anderson has a problem with it, uh, it's inappropriate of him to retaliate against you in terms of your professional setting for expressing your opinion to another teacher as it pertains to keeping students safe from a man who is obviously inappropriate. And what I would think is that every parent of a child at Sierra Bonita Elementary would want teachers raising the alarm about this kind of behavior.
Mhm.
You'd think, right? Because
Yeah.
the people who turned on me were actually parents also of students at that school, ironically.
And time again over the past 4 years, one of the things that I have encountered are victims who tell about uh, their ward families and their communities turning against them for reporting allegations of abuse, which is why people
Mhm.
don't report. The state of Utah has a 2.97% conviction rate for rape, has an under 13% prosecution rate, which means that if you do sexually abuse somebody like Adrian Villar did, you have a better than 87 out of 100 chance of not even being prosecuted. And even if you are convicted, well, you've got 97 out of 100 odds on that you're going to get away with it. You're not going to be convicted. Um, and so the people who report, both victims and witnesses, people in professional positions who are just trying to keep their students safe, um, they face greater retaliation and consequence than the person who's actually taking a student in a bathroom or a closet or an office and sexually assaulting them. Adrian Villar is in his 60s, correct?
Yes, he is. He's late 60s.
Here's the other thing I want our audience to understand. Cindy, tell everyone the average number of victims a pedophile accrues over the course of their life. The older student, is it the same student who said that he was molested by Mr. Villar in the school shed?
Yes.
Okay. And you haven't heard uh, anyone apologize to you from Sierra Bonita or Nebo School District.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
And as a result of the allegations against Mr. VR, they fired him and then they rehired him. Is that correct?
I'm not actually sure what happened. He supposedly asked for a transfer to another school. And so he was then transferred to Santaquin Elementary. And I don't know the details of how that actually happened.
So Nebo wasn't the only school district that hired Adrian VR. Juab school districts also hired him. Is that correct?
Yes, he was at Juab before he came to our district.
And they were aware of allegations against him.
My understanding is allegedly yes.
Okay. And so Adrian VR is currently in jail for the allegations against him, which have multiplied. And hopefully, as a result of this podcast episode, will continue to multiply as more victims come forward. Um, Ultimately, what's extraordinary about this case is not just the allegations against Mr. VR, it is the fact that Garrett Anderson, the principal, staked his reputation and his career on defending a man who is a pedophile, who has multiple allegations of child sexual abuse against him, and who had a reputation that preceded him from his prior school. And allegedly, that reputation extended to his time in Juab County at their school district. So, what's extraordinary about that is if you look at the financial implications, which is he jumps from $45,000 a year to $68,000 a year in the span of 2 years. Um, if you look at the divorce decree, he had over $88,000 in credit card debt. He did have a cleaning company, but the question is, how did he manage to keep that cleaning company afloat when he had over $40,000 in debt associated with that company? And then, of course, all of these factors together, how did he manage to stay afloat in terms of his home, which still had something of a mortgage on it, if I recall correctly from the divorce decree, and also afford to buy a Range Rover that he drove to school? It would be one thing if he were someone who was making $70,000 a year and he had a Range Rover. It's another thing entirely when that $70,000 a year is paired with $88,000 worth of credit card debt between his business and his personal cards. A lot of things about this case don't make any sense. A lot of things about this story don't make any sense, but the only part of it that does make sense to me is our guest.
Well, I think it's a shame that they harassed Janna even before the school year began. The present principal, the good guy, uh, he came in and harassed her before the school year even started, before he was even
Her
her
boss.
boss. And then they made her look like she's the bad guy on all this. And on top of it, they essentially fired her. They gave her an ultimatum: you can resign or we're going to let you go.
You
This
can
woman had,
transfer, or we're going to transfer you.
Transfer,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But they essentially pushed me out is
yeah,
what they did.
that's,
And I think that was the intention, was they wanted me to stay quiet. And I did after I left, and I
Mhm.
didn't say a word for over a year.
I think
Meanwhile, the
that's
school
sad.
janitor who uh, has prior allegations against him and current allegations against him, he wasn't pushed out.
Yeah,
He,
No,
isn't that interesting?
he was
yeah,
protected.
it's
Mhm.
extremely interesting. To me, that experience in Utah, I've heard it time and time again from victims and people who were whistleblowers, the retaliation that they faced, the ostracizing and the alienation. it was so foreign to me because I converted in Texas and I eventually moved to Florida, and my experience was 180 degrees opposite this. I had a lovely experience with Texas and Florida. Mormons, and one of the reasons I was skeptical about these sorts of allegations out of Utah was because it was so far removed from my experience as a Latter-day Saint in other states. And what I would say is in Utah, the church is very different than it is elsewhere.
It is. I grew up in Montana and I had
Yeah.
a different experience in Montana. I lived in Idaho. I had a different experience in Idaho. I've lived in New York and I had a different experience in New York. Utah is very unique.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about my wards and stakes that I experienced in Texas and Florida. Those people were lovely. They're some of the finest human beings you'll ever meet. I obviously am no longer a Latter-day Saint, don't agree with them doctrinally, um, but they were lovely people. And when I came to Utah, they were ugly people, especially around the issue of sexual abuse.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they
I've,
want to suppress the reports of it at all
yes.
cost.
Yes, I've had multiple survivors tell me that they were ostracized in their wards. They were told to be quiet, not to talk about this. It's happened time and time and time again. And I find that extremely discouraging and to threaten even. In fact, I've heard that Kirkton and McConkey has threatened survivors who speak up about what's happened to them. So we have a big problem here.
It's not bad enough that they've been sexually abused and tortured. They now have to deal with legal repercussions or the threat of legal repercussions to intimidate them into silence as well.
Mhm. It's
You
definitely
know,
not the love of Christ. We'll put it that way.
for me, like as I started to research things in the church a little more, um, that was one of my shelf breakers was the sex abuse and the cover up of sex abuse in the church. That one, before things had happened in my situation, that was something that I really, really struggled with.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean it's the reason I left the church was the cover-ups and the fact that I had written reports that were passed up by church insiders and people of influence, and nothing happened.
Yeah,
And those reports contained details um, that went far beyond uh, what was publicly known. They summed up what was publicly known as it pertained to the individual perpetrators that I wrote ecclesiastical summaries against. Um, it is unfortunate that the church seems to prioritize perpetrators over victims. I don't think it's accidental or coincidental. I no longer believe in coincidences where this is concerned.
Mhm.
Um, and I do think it's cultural. I think that perpetrators are entrenched and that Utah is a sanctuary state for people who rape children.
I would
Like,
agree with you.
Mhm.
at the end of the day, that's my rough estimation of this state. What I've been encouraged by is the tide turning. More and more people, instead of discounting endemic child sexual abuse or sexual impropriety on the part of prominent Latter-day Saints and the part of their communities, are now accepting the fact that this is real. And they're no longer buying this distinction between, say, ritual abuse and non ritual abuse. It's all the same thing. It's wrong,
Yeah,
and it's a criminal activity, and it is just simply a moral obscenity. And you either line up with the victims or you line up with um, someone like this custodian, Mr. Adrian VR. And you either look at what he's doing with children, as our guest today did, and you call it what it is. It, or you look away from it. And unfortunately, in this state for far too long, a lot of people have looked away, and a lot of children have suffered as a result. When I read that probable cause affidavit for the now adult male who was anally raped by Adrian VR in VR's residence, I I was disgusted. A lot of people had to look the other way over the years. It wasn't that Mr. VR was subtle, he was brazen. He isolated children in front of other adults routinely, and most of those adults looked the other way.
Like, did anyone else see anything? Like, there were other adults in the building. Did anybody notice what was
Well,
happening?
the school secretary definitely noticed.
Yeah, but I was in and out of the school more than anybody, like because I was part-time there and part-time at other schools. And I keep thinking, how was it that it was me that noticed this or had
I
this
don't think you were the only one that noticed. I think you were the only one that said anything.
that
Yeah.
was naive enough to speak up? I think
No, not naive.
I
Like,
was I
the
was
reality of it is you were the moral one
Hmm.
who
I was
said something.
moral, but I also feel like I had absolutely no idea that it would turn upside down on me the way it did. It
Yeah.
has taken almost 9 years of my life, and I haven't recovered. Like, my life hasn't gotten any easier because of this. Um, I think losing friends was devastating for me. And I know people are like, well, you're going to know who your real friends are. I'm like, yeah. And I found out the hard way, and that's fair enough. But um,
It really isn't fair.
it hurt. And I think
Hmm.
what hurts is I made that report in good faith. I honestly said, I don't think anything happened. I just think something doesn't feel right. But again, like I'm going to be criticized no matter what. I'm going to be criticized for not reporting sooner, not calling the police, for not going in there. And then I was criticized because I was ruining an innocent man's life because that's what we
He wasn't
said.
innocent at all.
But you have to understand, they led me to believe, again, Darvo, which is a new term for me, just recent, that I wish I would have known 9 years ago, because that's truly what happened to me. I became the offender. I think you've read all of the things that were said about me in the district by people I don't even know. I kept note of every time I heard something horrible said about me, I would write it down. And it's really hard to go back and read these things from people I don't even know that called me all sorts of horrible things. And I'm like, you don't even know me. And at the end of the day, do I ever get to um, have my reputation back as a teacher? Do I ever get to have these friendships back that I valued? I can't even go back to Spanish Fork without a lot of PTSD from what happened to me. So
Hmm.
uh, it cost me, it cost me a lot. And even as I talk to you, I'm like, how are they going to turn this against me? How are they going to take anything I say and turn it against me? And so it's always really, really hard to be public. And I have given up my anonymity. Um, but I also know that we want, you wonder why victims don't speak up, and I know why victims don't speak up. But if collectively, not just in this case, but if victims don't start speaking up, nothing is ever going to change.
Exactly. So we're in closing. How can we help you, Jana? What is something that the public can do to support you? Do you want them showing up at the hearing and giving you support? No.
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
what's going to happen is I'm going to go and they're going to tear me apart. And I don't know that I want to be, on display for a defense attorney to switch this on me and make this my fault. And I know that the people who support me will know that, but um, I think what I want more than anything is for people when they see something to speak up. And this isn't about me anymore. This is about victims, and this is about, I'm passionate about protecting children in schools. Um, I think it's important that everybody becomes very familiar with mandated reporting laws. And I feel like educators, especially, but everybody needs to watch out for our children and they need to be a voice because they don't have a voice and we are their voices. And so that's what I want for everybody is to please watch out for our little ones because they don't deserve this.
Uh, Janna, I'd like to thank you for being on the
Mhm.
show. I'd also like to thank you for your courage and what you did with for those two boys and what you set off in terms of it did cost you your teaching career. It's cost you a great deal personally and professionally. But Adrian VR is facing criminal charges at last, in part because of something you set in motion. And you are to be commended for that.
Thank
Mhm.
you. I appreciate that. I really do
Yeah.
appreciate that.
And all of you who retaliated against her and who wanted to cover for Mr. VR and what he was doing,
That's evil.
Keep it clean. Keep it clean.
you all know from my face and my mouth what I think about this. And you need to take a long, hard look in the mirror before God about how you treated this woman and the risk to children that you created by defending this man by carrying water for him. And what I would say to you is you're extremely lucky it's not my daughter in that school district.
Careful. Careful. Don't say what you want to say.
I never do where you're involved.
Yeah, that's right. So thank you so much for coming on our show, Janet, and having the bravery to tell your story. Um, we just, we're so grateful for you. I wish there were more teachers like you out there.
Thank you.
And yeah, we wish you the best. We hope you have a good outcome in your hearing. We hope that Mr. VR spends many, many years in jail. And if anybody wants to share a comment with us, you want to contact us at goel at investigationsandritualabuse.com or me at Relentless Hope at info at relentlesshopeforyou.org. We would love to hear from you and your opinions on this particular case. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us and have a good evening.